just being me. I want to talk to you about you. Well, wait a minute. When we do that, we got a bunch of fingers wrapped around pointing back at us. So, who are we? Let's ask ourselves some questions. So, we got to ask ourselves some other questions here. It's not just about mom and dad. We know that. We absolutely know that. Did you come from a big family or a small family? How many siblings did you have? Were there more than one? Were you the only one? Did you have brothers and sisters? How many of each? Now, now, are you married? Or do you plan to get married? Do you think you'll ever take that plunge? If you're married, do you plan to have kids? Or do you already have kids? How many? Boys, girls, a combination of the two? How many of each? And how do you plan to raise them? See, who we are usually reflects upon our children, and who they are usually reflects upon us. Let's ask ourselves some other questions. What kind of work slash business slash career do you have? Are you a business owner? Do you work for someone else? Do you consider what you do a job or a career? And let's ask ourselves now, what goals do we have for ourselves? Do you have any short-term goals, things you want to accomplish in the near future, in the next 3, 6, 12 months? Do you have long-term goals, something that's going to take a year or multiple years to accomplish? And if you have those kind of goals, have you broken them down into steps? Because it's hard to stay on a goal if it takes that long. You have to be able to see some accomplishment. So you need to break those goals down, and you need to make them into small steps that are achievable in shorter periods of time. Now, with that in mind, we have to ask ourselves, where do I see myself in a year, 5 years, 10 years? Where do we see ourselves? What do we think we'll be doing? Do we think we will have achieved some of our short and long-term goals? Do we even think that the goals we set are achievable? Well, they should be. You have to put some work into it, some thought into it, and some research. Because if it's unachievable, then you may be setting yourself up for disappointment down the road. We have to now ask ourselves about our longest term goal, something we should all be, if we haven't achieved already, working to achieve. So I'm going to ask you this one big question, and this is something that may take a lot of thought, and it may take a while before you can answer this to yourself. All these questions I've asked you so far, they're all questions for you to answer for yourself. No one can answer them for you. What are your plans for retirement? We all really want to retire at some point in some kind of way. Some of us want to fully retire, some of us want to, semi retire. In other words, retire but still have an ongoing income from a business or something like that. So, with that in mind, I ask you again, what are your plans for retirement? Have you really thought about it? Have you put any time into the research? Do you know what it takes to retire? If you're a U.S. citizen and you've worked for some time now, and your ultimate goal is to one day be able to not work, or at least not work as hard, how do you actually achieve that? How do you actually achieve retirement? Because it is an achievement. It is something we work a long time, like multiple years, to achieve. And if the goal is not to have to work, but to be able to continue to live at some capacity of how you've lived during your work life, to be comfortable, to be able to pay your bills if there are any, which there will be. There may not be as much as they are now, but there will be bills. How do we achieve that? How do you ensure that not only do you have an income or a resource to live off of in retirement, but that it's enough to cover all of your expenses in retirement?